for those tough wake-ups.
John Gott drank a beer and then crushed it off the side of his helmet. This was a damn Canada Heritage moment.
It's Marsh and Melo.
I've been talking about it for probably 5 years now, and I finally pulled the trigger. Saw that beer, chugged it, and crushed it over my head, and that was about it.
We welcome in another beer crusher off the side of the skull. It is Ben Grant who joins us here from X's and Argos, who has been pumping out all sorts of great content for you. Toronto Argonauts related, of course, on cfperspective.com. Ben, first time having you on. Thank you for being here with us. We love the setup. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. I've seen it before, but it feels even more special being in the same Zoom call with you.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm really happy to join you guys. I hope this doesn't throw you off too much. I know you're usually surrounded by black and gold, and these colors don't necessarily sit that easy with you, probably.
Well, I do. To your credit, I do have a Flutie bobblehead over my shoulder here somewhere in my collection, and I do have the Ticats helmet sitting right next to it for anybody who is interested. So trying to have transparency, fairness, and balance here on CFP. But you wrote a bunch of great articles that you've done. You've done, what happens with Ryan Dinwiddie if they get off to a slow start. You've talked about Enoch Mwamba a bunch recently on your show, I know, but the reason we wanted to have you on was there's been so much to break down, to think about with the Argonauts and the acquisitions that they've made, whether it be from the NFL, other guys from around the CFL, and you put together a depth chart for us on CFP, and it was, you tweeted at me the other day saying, hey, great job putting together the mock draft on CFL.ca. This must have taken a lot of work. I'm like, not as much work as trying to figure out what's happening with the Argos depth chart, and I'm just intrigued by what the hardest positional group was for you to try and figure out theoretically where guys are going to land once we get to kickoff.
Well, this year was actually a little easier than last year, because last year, just trying to find film on some of those guys, like they brought in Colton Nelson, son of Mark Nelson, the special teams coordinator. And to try and find film on him last year, I had to get in touch with high school coaches at Bixby and Jenks in Oklahoma. And I was trying to piece together rugby film that he had. And I was like, how do I set, where do I put this guy on the depth chart? This year, and an amazing athlete. And I would have been really interested to see where he'd have fallen. But this was a little easier in that sense. The tough part was translating some of the XFL film and saying, well, how does this maybe play on a Canadian field? There's so many Americans without any CFL experience on this roster. And some guys from the Arena League, from Indoor Football League, what does that look like? And so those guys were really tough. I think in terms of a positional group, the defensive line is interesting. I am excited about it, but I don't know what they're necessarily going to do. And that could, one move that they make could change the entire scope of the defensive line. And I think the defensive backfield was another one that I've really juggled around many times. I've gone through, I think I'm now in the midst of my 14th version of this depth chart since January. And it's been tough. Like if you want to take a look at like the defensive backfield, for example.
Yep.
So I believe very strongly that Alden Darby is the best safety on the roster in terms of having a free, a one high guy. I love Alden Darby there. But I don't know that everyone feels the same way that I do, because he wasn't the plan at safety in 2019. Chamberlain had him at boundary corner, which makes sense. He's a great boundary corner. And the plan was Jermaine Gabriel at free. But Darby brought so much more. Once they ended up putting him in the game, they saw the communication that he brought. They saw how he could really take advantage of quarterbacks' reads. He made some amazing picks. There's one that stands out to me. You'll remember, you were covering this game, the last game that the Argos got to play in, end of the 2019 season. There's one play in particular. Hamilton's got the ball on the 10-yard line. Hayden Moore's in the game because Hamilton, didn't really care that much about the result, but we did. And Darby's sitting there in cover one. He's one high on the boundary hash, ball spot on the boundary hash. We got trips to the field. And Hamilton was running like a smash concept, a trip smash concept. So they've got the three receivers got a corner into the back of the end zone. Darby picks the ball off in the corner of the end zone from single high on the boundary hash on the 10-yard line. And talking to him about how you made something like that happen, because it's you never see that. And it was communication. It's talking to his guys and saying to Shaq Richardson, okay, you're on your own here. You've got no help. Telling his boundary half, you've got no help. I know they're going outside. I've watched film. I know quarterback tendencies. We got a young quarterback in the game. He knows his man coverage. He's going to look for that corner route. And, so it's reasons like that. Like I need to have him at free. But if this coaching staff, if Coach Young decides, I don't want him at boundary corner, then everything's got to move around. Now that means Shaq probably bounces inside to either boundary half or maybe Sam. And there's a ripple effect that goes throughout the roster. So that's one that my depth chart could look completely wrong, and it often does, if they just make that one move. If they decide Darby's going to be a corner, not a free, then my whole depth chart is shot.
Ben, I want to switch conversation here to the offensive side of the ball. When you look at the slot back position for the Argos, or those inside receivers, whether it's Kendall Wright, who had a lot of success in the NFL, now coming to the Argos, Jawan Briskason obviously coming to the Argos, and you have Eric Rogers. So you look at that group of players, that's as dynamic of a group, inside receiver spot across the Canadian Football League. Do you think Nick Arbuckle is going to take a little bit of time to find some rapport with those guys to really get rolling for the Argos to be successful?
I do. I actually think the Argos are going to get off to a bit of a slow start, because it's just going to take, and because I don't think camp's going to be as long as it normally is. There's not nearly going to be the off-season work that there normally is. So I think it's going to take a little while. I wouldn't be surprised if the Argos start slowly, because it's going to take Arbuckle, not only Arbuckle, time to learn who these guys are. I'm not sure the coaching staff is going to know exactly what they want to do with these guys. In terms of like slot backs, who knows what those are going to be. I think we can pretty safely say that Rogers is going to be somewhere there in the slot. I think probably on the boundary side. But yeah, Kendall Wright, I'm not sure. I talked to Luke Braun, who does a Locked On Vikings podcast about Kendall Wright, because that was sort of his last NFL stop. And I was asking him, like, what did he look like? What went wrong there? Because he performed at such a high level in the NFL and then suddenly didn't make the Vikings team. And he basically said he just didn't seem as motivated, wasn't running well, wasn't catching the ball, made some crucial drops, and I think came in unprepared. And so if that's the case again, then he's not going to be on the field. But if that was a bit of a kick in the behind for him, and he's now motivated and can get himself even close to the level that he was performing at before, yeah, he'll be out there. But like you said, it's going to take Arbuckle time to work with all these guys, to acclimate all these guys to the CFL too. These are guys that aren't used to this style of play.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's one name out there that was a marquee signing for you, a name of interest that came in, whether it's Martavius Bryant, like you mentioned, Kendall Wright, or Charleston Hughes, Cordero Law, I mean, you got a bunch of different names to be able to pick from here. Pick one that's not on the roster in week one, because the thing that keeps coming back to me is there's all these names, and I'm wondering which of them doesn't actually make it into double blue by the time we kick off the season.
I think the easiest one for me to say is that it's either going to be Kendall Wright or Martavis Bryant. I don't think they both make the team. And the way I would lean right now is I would say it's probably going to be Bryant that isn't with this group. I hope he is, because that means that things are going well. I think that would be a really, really good situation. I think he's the ideal X receiver for this team, but I think he's going to be battling with Tavares Daniels, who's very good and has really looked the best when he's been out wide. And so I think it's going to be tough for him. And I find that I've seen a number of pieces on this before too. And you guys know, so many high profile Americans that come into the CFL don't work out. And I believe a lot of the reason is that they believe they're coming into something that they don't need to put the same level of effort into. But the truth of the matter is there's very little difference between the CFL and the NFL in terms of the talent level. It's a different game, but the level is still elite. And this is a situation where if he comes in even with 90% of what he was giving in the NFL, then it's not going to be enough. So that would be my guess. And I hope I'm wrong, because I think that'll put the Argos in a great situation if they do have Bryant and Daniels and Rogers, Wright, and all these other guys on the roster. But I don't know. I'm skeptical.
If I make you choose just quickly here, Kyle, before you get your last question in, between Sean Oakman and Martavius Bryant, which of those two is on the roster?
It was between those two guys. I think probably Bryant. I think Oakman's had some trouble. He was a fantastic football player. He just absolutely destroyed teams. It's such this the Greek god physique. You know, he's like 9 feet tall and just absolutely ripped. You've seen all the memes and pictures of him that went viral with that crazy face mask that he used to have. And there's a lot to be excited about him, but he's had a lot of trouble, and I'm not sure how well he's going to be received. And the Argos haven't really addressed that yet either. So it's something that, I don't know. I think he's got a lot working against him right now. And that's a pretty competitive group too. The interior of the defensive line is not going to be an easy place to break into. And so I don't see him getting past, Thornton, Nevis, Foote, Justin Thomas, even. Like, I think it's going to be tough for him to break in. So I would say between those two, Bryant.
Ben, here in Hamilton, obviously everybody looks at Simone Lawrence and says, okay, that's a guy you can build your defense around. And whether it's been Simone Lawrence or, a Justin Tuggle or a Larry Dean, that Will linebacker and that middle linebacker, that tandem is so important now in Toronto with Enoch Mwamba and Cameron Judge. How do you think they're going to work together and obviously be a difference maker for the Argos?
It'll be interesting to see. I'm excited about it. Like, you were talking about the most outstanding Canadian and the runner-up in the same linebacking core, which is pretty cool. I think it is going to be really tough for teams to run up the middle. I think that there's a pretty intimidating group there. There are still some question marks. There have been some missed tackles. They have shown some issues when it comes to getting it wide. And I imagine that's what teams are going to try and do. If I were trying to scheme for this Argos defense, I think I'd try and get to the outside. I think that both to take advantage of some of these headhunting ends that are, going to come crashing in after the quarterback. But also I think they may be able to take a little bit of advantage of the linebacker play there too. But, we're being really picky here. Those are both two outstanding players. There's not much in terms of weaknesses. And just I've been looking a lot at Enoch Mwamba's 2019 film. I really don't see a drop off. I don't see him having slowed down. I know his stats aren't quite where they were in 2018, but they're still really good. And he still looks really fast for a man that size. Yeah. So I'm excited to see them both together.
No doubt. Ben, we appreciate all your insights. We're looking forward to talking, hopefully, Ticats Argos as many times as possible with a full, reasonable schedule throughout the year. Thanks, brother. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Sounds good. Take care, guys.